The text arrived at 6:47 a.m. on November 15th while I was reviewing my escape timeline for the 100th time. Emergency family meeting tonight. Thanksgiving planning. You're in charge again. Mom's message was followed by 17 more from various relatives, each adding their demands to my already impossible list. I stared at my phone from the coffee shop where I'd been meeting with Sarah, my therapist, every Tuesday for 6 months. She'd been helping me understand that what my family called tradition, most people would recognize as exploitation. 47 people again? Sarah asked, reading the panic in my eyes. 47 people. 3 turkeys. 8 sides. 2 dessert tables. Complete setup and cleanup. All unpaid, of course. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Mom says I'm gifted at hosting. Sarah leaned forward. Emma, what did we discuss about the word gifted in your family? That it's code for free labor, I recited. And that being competent doesn't make me responsible for everyone else's comfort. The family meeting that evening was held at Mom's house, same as always. 23 relatives gathered to delegate my upcoming 4-day marathon of cooking, cleaning, and serving. I sat quietly in the corner taking detailed notes in my phone, but not the kind they expected. Emma will handle the shopping Thursday morning, Aunt Patricia announced. She knows all the best places. And the cooking Wednesday through Friday, added Uncle Mike. Remember, we need everything ready by 2 p.m. sharp on Thursday. Don't forget the deep cleaning before and after, Mom chimed in. The house needs to be spotless for our guests. My cousin Brad raised his hand. What about Emma eating with us this year? She was in the kitchen the whole time last year. The room erupted in laughter. Emma loves cooking for everyone, Mom explained. She gets more joy from serving than eating. Right, sweetie? I looked up from my phone where I'd been documenting every assignment, every expectation, every assumption about my willingness to sacrifice my entire holiday weekend. Absolutely, Mom. I live to serve. More laughter. They thought I was being enthusiastic. Uncle Mike pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. Here's the list of dietary restrictions and special requests. Jenny's bringing her new boyfriend who's gluten-free, vegan, and allergic to nuts. Carol's twins won't eat anything green. And remember, no salt for Dad's blood pressure, but make sure everything still tastes good. I accepted the list with a smile. Of course. Anything else? Oh, and we'll need you to coordinate the kids' table activities, Aunt Sarah added. 12 children under 10 need entertainment while the adults relax. Entertainment, crafts, and snacks, Patricia clarified. But quiet activities. We don't want noise during football. I nodded enthusiastically while mentally calculating. 120 hours of work over 4 days, serving 47 people, managing a dozen children, accommodating 23 different dietary preferences, all while receiving exactly 0 help and 0 compensation. You're so lucky to have such a giving daughter, Brad's wife told my mother. I wish I had someone to handle all our holiday stress. Emma's special that way, Mom beamed. She's never been interested in her own life anyway. No husband, no children, no real responsibilities. This gives her purpose. The meeting ended with hugs and gratitude directed at my mother for raising such a selfless daughter. I collected my assignments, promised to send everyone the detailed timeline by Saturday, and drove home to my empty apartment. But instead of opening my laptop to create their timeline, I opened my travel booking app. The conversation with Dr. Sarah 3 weeks earlier had been a turning point. Emma, I want you to imagine something. What would happen if you just didn't show up? They'd be furious. Thanksgiving would be ruined. 47 people would be disappointed. And then what? I'd stared at her, realizing I'd never thought past the immediate crisis. I don't know. They'd figure it out, she'd said gently. They're all adults. They'd order pizza, go to restaurants, cook their own food. Life would continue. But they're counting on me. They're counting on you to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. That's different than depending on you. Now, sitting in my apartment with 47 people's expectations weighing on my shoulders, I remembered her words. They'd figure it out. The flight to Paris was $847. Direct. Departing Wednesday at 11 p.m., exactly when I was supposed to be starting the turkey prep that would keep me awake all night. I clicked book now. The next morning I sent my usual detailed timeline to the family group chat. Everything looked normal. Shopping lists organized by store, cooking schedule broken down by hour, set up assignments for each family member. What they didn't notice was that every single task was assigned to them. Emma, this timeline has Uncle Mike cooking one of the turkeys. Mom called me that afternoon. That's a mistake, right? No mistake. Mike volunteered last month to help more this year. He did. Check the October group chat. He said he felt bad watching me do everything alone every year. Silence. She was clearly scrolling through old messages, looking for a conversation that had never happened. Well, he probably didn't mean actually cooking, she said finally. I'm sure he'll figure it out. YouTube has great turkey tutorials. Tuesday morning brought a flurry of confused texts. Emma, the timeline says I'm bringing chairs from my house? Aunt Patricia. Why am I assigned salad prep Wednesday night? Cousin Brad. Did you really put me down for cleanup crew? Uncle Dave. I responded to each with cheerful encouragement. You offered to help more this year, remember? I'm just taking you up on it. By Tuesday evening my phone was buzzing constantly. The family group chat had exploded into chaos as relatives tried to coordinate responsibilities they'd never handled before. Who knows how to cook a turkey? Uncle Mike. How many pounds of potatoes for 47 people? Aunt Carol. What time do stores open Wednesday? Cousin Jenny. Where does Emma usually buy the dinner rolls? Mom. I muted the group chat and continued packing. 3 changes of clothes, my passport, and the novel I'd been too busy to read for 6 months. Wednesday morning I sent one final message to the group. Running some last-minute errands. See everyone tomorrow. So excited to finally relax and enjoy Thanksgiving with the family. Then I drove to the airport. My phone buzzed continuously during the flight delay, but I kept it on airplane mode. As we pushed back from the gate at 11:23 p.m., I wondered what was happening in Mom's kitchen. Were they panicking yet? Had someone figured out that 3 turkeys needed to be started hours ago? I ordered a glass of wine and opened my book. The flight attendant dimmed the cabin lights as we reached cruising altitude. Below us, America disappeared into darkness. Somewhere down there, 47 of my relatives were probably discovering what Thanksgiving planning actually required. When we landed in Paris Thursday afternoon, I finally turned my phone back on. 137 missed messages. 49 missed calls. 17 voicemails. I scrolled through the chaos chronologically. 11:47 p.m. Wednesday. Emma, where are you? The turkeys need to go in the oven. Mom. 12:23 a.m. Thursday. Emma, call me now. Nothing is prepared. Mom. 1:15 a.m. The turkeys are frozen solid. How long do they take to thaw? Uncle Mike. 2:46 a.m. Emma, this isn't funny anymore. People are arriving in 12 hours. Aunt Patricia. 6:30 a.m. Where the hell are you? Dad. 8:15 a.m. Emma's car isn't at her apartment. Something's wrong. Brad. 9:42 a.m. Should we call the police? Mom. 10:30 a.m. Boston Market is closed. Grocery stores are closed. Everything's closed. Uncle Dave. 11:18 a.m. 47 people are coming in 3 hours and we have raw turkeys. Aunt Carol. 12:45 p.m. First guest just arrived. We're serving them crackers in panic. Jenny. 1:30 p.m. Emma, if you're reading this, we're sorry. Please come back. We'll order pizza. Mom. 2:15 p.m. Pizza places are closed too. It's Thanksgiving. We have 47 people and 3 bags of frozen vegetables. Patricia. I sat in the Charles de Gaulle airport, reading about my family's first lesson in event planning. The voicemails were even better. Mom crying. Dad shouting. Uncle Mike admitting he'd never cooked anything more complicated than toast. Aunt Patricia demanding to know how I always made it look so easy. The final message had arrived 20 minutes ago. Emma, I don't know where you are, but you've made your point. We never realized how much you did. Please call when you get this. We love you. We need you. Mom. I took a screenshot of the message thread and texted it to Sarah with a note. Currently in Paris. Strategy worked perfectly. She responded immediately. How do you feel? I looked around the bustling airport, then at my phone full of frantic messages from people who'd spent 15 years taking my labor for granted. Free. The hotel I'd booked was a tiny place in Montmartre. run by an elderly woman named Madame Dubois who spoke perfect English but pretended not to understand when I tried my terrible French. She served me coffee and pastry while I told her about my strategic Thanksgiving escape. Americans and their holidays, she laughed. So much stress about one meal. In France, if someone doesn't want to cook, we say, "Bon, we'll eat bread and cheese." Life continues. My family acts like Thanksgiving will end Western civilization if I'm not there to manage everything. And did it? And civilization? I checked my phone. The group chat had finally gone quiet around 4 p.m. with Uncle Mike's message. Ordered Chinese food for everyone. Actually pretty good. Emma, wherever you are, we owe you an apology. Apparently they survived on Chinese takeout, I told Madame Dubois. Magnifique. Problem solved. You are free to enjoy Paris. That evening I walked along the Seine with a glass of wine and my book. My phone buzzed occasionally with new messages, but they'd shifted from panic to reflection. Family members were starting to understand what they'd put me through for 15 years. I never realized you spent 3 days straight cooking for us, Aunt Patricia. How did you manage 12 kids plus all the food every year? Jenny. We should have been helping you, not just showing up to eat. Brad. I'm embarrassed about how we treated you. You deserved better. Mom. Friday morning I called Sarah from a cafe near the Louvre. How was your first day of freedom? She asked. Incredible. And terrifying. I keep waiting for someone to need something from me. That feeling will fade. You've trained yourself to be constantly available to everyone else. Learning to prioritize your own needs takes practice. The family's having a group conversation about next year. They want to rotate hosting duties and create actual committees for food, setup, and cleanup. How does that make you feel? I watched Parisians walking past the cafe, living their lives without managing anyone else's comfort. Proud of them for learning. And angry that it took abandoning them for them to respect my time. Both feelings are valid. They want me to call them. To talk things through, and plan a better system for Christmas. What do you want? I'd been asking myself that question all morning. For 32 years my wants had been irrelevant. Family needs came first. Now suddenly I had permission to consider my own preferences. I want to finish my vacation. I want to come home to boundaries that stick. And I want them to prove they can manage a holiday without me before I agree to participate again. Those sound like healthy goals. I'm scared they'll go back to the old patterns once I'm home. They might try. That's why you need to be prepared to leave again if necessary. Saturday afternoon I video called my family from my hotel room. All 23 relatives had gathered at Mom's house for what they called a family accountability meeting. Emma, we're sorry, Mom began. We took advantage of your kindness for years without realizing it. We want to do better, Uncle Mike added. We've created committees for Christmas. Food, decorations, cleanup, kids' activities. Everyone has assignments. And we're hiring a cleaning service, Aunt Patricia announced. No one person should handle all that work. Brad held up a notebook. We've documented everything you usually do. It's 3 pages long. We never understood the scope. I listened to their apologies and promises from my hotel room overlooking the Eiffel Tower. They seemed sincere, but I'd heard promises before. I appreciate your reflection, I told them. But I need to see sustainable change before I commit to future holidays. What does that mean? Dad asked. It means I'm enjoying Paris. I'm extending my trip through New Year's. Plan Christmas without me. If you can successfully manage a holiday using your new committee system, I'll consider participating next year. The screen filled with disappointed faces, but I noticed something different. Instead of anger or demands, I saw acceptance. Maybe even respect. We understand, Mom said quietly. We have work to do to earn your trust back. After the call, I walked to a nearby brasserie for dinner. The waiter seated me at a small table with a view of the street, and I ordered wine and steak frites without consulting anyone else's dietary restrictions. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. How did the family call go? Better than expected. They're planning Christmas without me. How does that feel? I thought about it while watching Parisians enjoy their Saturday evening. Like freedom. And like the beginning of something healthier. The next 3 weeks in Paris passed quickly. I took cooking classes, visited museums, and read 5 novels. Most importantly, I practiced saying no to small requests from strangers. declining to help lost tourists, refusing to give directions I wasn't sure about, letting other people solve their own problems. Every few days the family group chat updated me on their Christmas planning progress. The committees were actually working. Uncle Mike had successfully cooked a practice turkey. Aunt Patricia had researched party rental companies. Jenny had organized activities for the kids. We might actually pull this off, Mom texted on December 20th. Still wish you were here, but we're proud of what we're learning. I extended my stay through January 15th. On Christmas Day I video called the family dinner. 43 relatives were seated around 3 properly set tables. The food looked good. The kids were entertained. No one looked stressed. How was Christmas morning? I asked. Chaotic but fun, Uncle Mike admitted. The turkey was only slightly dry. We burned the rolls, Jenny laughed. But everything else turned out great. And cleanup only took 2 hours with everyone helping, Brad added. Mom looked directly into the camera. Emma, we did it. We planned and executed a holiday without exploiting anyone. We're proud of ourselves, but mostly we're grateful for everything you taught us. You didn't teach us, I corrected gently. You had to learn it yourselves. When I finally returned home in January, I found 17 thank you cards in my mailbox. Each family member had written a personal apology and commitment to better boundaries. The first family gathering after my return was Uncle Mike's birthday in February. I arrived to find assigned tasks posted on the refrigerator, professional cleaning already completed, and relatives working together in the kitchen. Emma. Aunt Patricia hugged me. You're just in time for cake. We've got everything handled. I sat at the table as a guest for the first time in 15 years. Someone else served dinner. Someone else coordinated the kids' activities. Someone else managed cleanup. How does it feel? Mom asked, sitting beside me. Strange. Good strange. We've been talking about doing a group trip to Paris next fall, she continued. To thank you for teaching us about boundaries. Would you help us plan it? I smiled and shook my head. I'd love to join you, but you'll need to plan it yourselves. She laughed. Fair enough. We're still learning. As I drove home that evening, I realized something had fundamentally changed. My family had learned to function without my constant management. More importantly, I'd learned that my worth wasn't tied to my usefulness. Sometimes the only way to teach people to value you is to remove yourself from their lives until they learn to appreciate what you provided. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is your absence. The smoke alarm that went off during my escape had been the sound of their old expectations burning. What emerged from those ashes was something better. A family that could take care of itself and a daughter who finally understood that her needs mattered too. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. How was the birthday party? Perfect. I was a guest instead of staff. How does that feel? I pulled into my driveway and looked up at my own apartment. My sanctuary, my space, my life that I'd finally learned to protect. Like coming home to myself.
This house belongs to my son. Pack your things and leave. Margaret shouted, waving some papers in my face. Her fancy clothes and perfect gray hair couldn't hide the anger in her eyes. I stood in my kitchen, sipping my coffee. This was the home I had renovated over the last 5 years, and now my mother-in-law was trying to take it from me. My name is Olivia Chin, and at 34, I never thought I'd be fighting for my home against the woman who had made my marriage miserable for 8 years. Did you hear me? Margaret snapped. This house belongs to James. It always has. I set my coffee down. Interesting timing, Margaret. James is away, and suddenly you show up with these papers. She smirked. There's nothing sudden about it. This house was bought with our family money. You have no right to stay, especially now that James has realized your marriage is over. I stayed calm. And what exactly has James realized? Margaret sat on my couch like she owned it. He's meeting with divorce lawyers. He finally understands that marrying someone like you was a mistake. I almost laughed. For years, she'd looked down on me, insulting my middle-class background and my job as a restoration architect. But her words didn't hurt anymore. I think you should check your facts, Margaret, I said, walking to my antique desk, the same one she once mocked me for buying. Margaret narrowed her eyes. What facts? I know everything about this family's property. Clearly you don't, I said, running my fingers along the desk. A couple of months ago, I found some old documents from 1985, the year this house was built. Do you remember that year? She hesitated. That's ancient history. It doesn't matter. It matters a lot, I said, because the original deed wasn't in your family's name at all. Margaret shot up from the couch, her papers falling to the floor. You're lying. No, you had fake copies. The real deed says this house belonged to Eleanor Wright, your husband's first wife, the woman you told everyone had abandoned him. But in truth— Shut up. Margaret's face turned pale. You made everyone believe Eleanor left, but she didn't. She died under mysterious circumstances, and this house was meant for her son, Thomas Wright, not James. The steps and you erased from the family history. Margaret's hands trembled. Those are lies. I found Thomas, I continued. He's a history professor in Oregon now. We talked. He remembers everything. And last week, he signed an affidavit reclaiming his inheritance, including this house. I showed her an email from my lawyer. The police are reopening Eleanor's case too. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. James will never believe you. He already knows, I said, picking up one of her fallen papers. He's not on a business trip. He's in Oregon, meeting Thomas. Turns out, he's not as loyal to you as you thought. Margaret's face crumbled. She gathered her papers with shaking hands. You've ruined everything, she hissed. This isn't over. You're right, I said, opening the front door. The police will be here tomorrow. You might want to get a lawyer. As she hurried to her car, I felt no joy, only sadness for the family she had broken. But at least now, the truth would finally come out. I picked up my coffee and looked out at the garden Eleanor had planted long ago. Her roses were blooming, their deep red petals proof that some roots run deeper than anyone realizes. My phone buzzed with a message from James. Just finished talking with Thomas. Coming home tomorrow. I'm so sorry for everything. Thank you for finding the truth. I smiled, touching the old deed in my pocket. Justice can come in unexpected ways, hidden in old furniture, and in the courage to face the past. The next morning, I sat in our living room across from Detective Sarah Mills, watching as she examined the documents I found in the secretary desk. The early morning light streamed through the windows, casting shadows across the worn papers that had changed everything. These are quite something, Detective Mills said, carefully placing the original deed back into its protective sleeve. And you found these while restoring the furniture? Yes. I nodded, remembering the moment the hidden compartment had sprung open. At first, I thought they were just old building records, but then I saw Eleanor's name and things started falling into place. The detective made another note in her pad. Mrs. Wright's death was ruled accidental at the time, a fall down the basement stairs. But there were questions that were never answered. Because Margaret made sure they weren't asked, James said quietly from beside me. He returned late last night, his meeting with Thomas having lasted longer than expected. The dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and hard truths. Tell me about Thomas, Detective Mills prompted, turning to a fresh page. James ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I had no idea I had a brother. All these years, Mother told me she married my father when he was a young widower. She never mentioned Eleanor, never said anything about Thomas. His voice cracked slightly. He has her eyes, Eleanor's eyes. When I saw him yesterday, it was like seeing all the family photos Mother destroyed coming back to life. I squeezed his hand, feeling the slight tremor in his fingers. The past 24 hours had shaken his world to its core. Thomas remembers the night Eleanor died, I added, pulling out the signed statement he'd given us. He was 12, hiding at the top of the stairs. He saw Margaret and Eleanor arguing about the house. Eleanor had discovered something about Margaret's past, something that would have prevented her marriage to Thomas's father. Detective Mills leaned forward. And what was that? Margaret was still married to someone else, James said bitterly. Thomas found the proof. Marriage records that showed her first husband was very much alive when she married our father. Eleanor threatened to expose her, and then she had her accident, the detective finished, her expression grim. Why didn't Thomas come forward before? Margaret convinced everyone he'd run away, I explained. She intercepted his calls, forged letters to his father, even paid people to say they'd seen him in another state. By the time Thomas finally got back in contact, his father had died believing his son had abandoned him. The detective's phone buzzed, and she checked it quickly. The forensics team is ready to examine the basement. With your permission. James nodded numbly. As the detective left to coordinate with her team, he turned to me, his eyes haunted. How did I not see it? All these years, the way she controlled everything, everyone. She even tried to control us. She almost succeeded. I reminded him gently. Remember last year, when she almost convinced you to put the house in her name for tax purposes? He grimaced. If you hadn't insisted on having our lawyer review everything, God, Olivia, I'm so sorry. For all the times I didn't stand up to her, for letting her treat you like an outsider. Hey, I touched his cheek, making him look at me. You're standing up to her now. That's what matters. The sound of cars pulling up outside drew our attention. Through the window, we saw Margaret being escorted from a police car, her usual impeccable appearance replaced by something more frantic. Behind her, another car arrived and a tall man stepped out, his gray streaked hair and familiar eyes unmistakable. Thomas, James whispered, standing up. He came. We met them at the front door. The two brothers, separated by 30 years of lies, faced each other in the morning light. Then Thomas stepped forward and hugged James, decades of lost time conveyed in that simple gesture. I'm sorry, Thomas said as they pulled apart. I should have tried harder to find you, to tell you the truth. You're here now, James replied, his voice rough with emotion. That's what matters. Margaret, standing between two officers, watched this reunion with visible distaste. This proves nothing, she snapped. You can't believe the words of a runaway who abandoned his family. Thomas turned to her, his expression calm but firm. I didn't run away, Margaret. You made sure I couldn't come home. But I never stopped trying to find the truth about what happened to my mother. Mrs. Anderson. Detective Mills emerged from the house, holding an evidence bag. We found something interesting in the basement. Traces of blood behind the old wood paneling. Blood that's been there for 30 years. Would you like to explain that? Margaret's composure finally shattered completely. She was going to ruin everything, she hissed. All my careful plans, my new life. I couldn't let her destroy that. The detective nodded to the officers, who began reading Margaret her rights. As they led her to the police car, she turned back one last time, her eyes wild. James, don't let them do this. I'm your mother. But James stood firm, his brother beside him, as Margaret was taken away. The web of lies she'd woven had finally unraveled, bringing down the careful facade she'd maintained for 3 decades. Thomas walked slowly into the house, his hand trailing along the wallpaper. Mom loved this place, he said softly. She used to say it was where our family would always be together. James joined him, looking around as if seeing the house for the first time. Tell me about her, please. As the brothers settled in the living room, sharing memories and bridging the years of separation, I slipped quietly into the kitchen to make coffee. Through the window, I could see Eleanor's roses swaying in the breeze, their blooms a vibrant reminder that truth, like flowers, can emerge from the darkest places. 6 months after Margaret's arrest, I stood in Eleanor's garden, planting new roses alongside the old ones. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and fresh earth. So much had changed since that confrontation in our living room. Yet some things remained constant, like these roses, stubborn and beautiful, refusing to be erased. Need a hand? Thomas's voice called from the patio. He'd been staying with us while the legal proceedings continued, helping piece together the fragments of their broken family history. Always I smiled, handing him a trowel. These heritage roses are from the same nursery Eleanor used to buy from. Thomas knelt beside me, his hands expertly working the soil. Mom would love this. She always said a garden needs old and new growth to thrive. He paused, a familiar shadow crossing his face. The detective called this morning. Margaret took the plea deal. I sat back on my heels, watching his expression carefully. How do you feel about that? 20 years, he said quietly. It doesn't bring Mom back, but at least now everyone knows the truth. No more hiding, no more lies. The sound of James's car pulling into the driveway drew our attention. He'd been meeting with the family lawyer, finalizing the paperwork to legally restore Thomas's inheritance. My husband looked different these days, lighter somehow, as if uncovering the truth had freed him from a weight he carried his whole life. It's done, he announced, joining us in the garden. The house is officially in both our names, Thomas, just like Mom wanted. He looked around at the half-planted roses. Need another gardener? I handed him a pair of gloves. Eleanor's garden could always use more love. As we worked together, I thought about the documents found in that old desk, not just the deed, but Eleanor's letters and diary entries. She'd written about her hopes for her sons, her dreams for this house as a place where family could heal and grow. In a way, 30 years later, her wish was finally coming true. The investigation had revealed more than just Margaret's crimes. We discovered that Eleanor had been a talented artist, her paintings stored away in the attic by Margaret. Thomas and James spent evenings going through them, their mother's vision of the world captured in vibrant oils and soft watercolors. "I'm thinking of opening a gallery," Thomas said, patting soil around a new rose bush. "Showing Mom's work, maybe featuring other local artists too. There's that empty storefront downtown." James nodded enthusiastically. "The old Miller building? It's perfect. Those big windows, the natural light." He turned to me. "What do you think, Olivia? Want to help restore another piece of history?" I felt warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. This was what Eleanor had wanted, her sons working together, building something meaningful, turning pain into possibility. "I'd love to," I said. "We could preserve the original architecture while creating a modern gallery space. Honor the past while embracing the future." Later that evening, after Thomas had gone home, James and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The newly planted roses cast long shadows across the lawn, their silhouettes merging with Eleanor's original garden. "Thank you," James said softly, taking my hand. "For not giving up, for finding the truth, for bringing my brother back to me." I squeezed his hand. "I just restored an old desk. Eleanor did the real work. She left us everything we needed to uncover the truth. She knew someone would find it eventually." "She would have loved you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have her spirit, her way of seeing beauty in broken things and making them whole again." Inside the house, Eleanor's painting of the garden, newly restored and framed, hung in a living room. Thomas had found it hidden behind other canvases, dated just days before her death. In it, red roses bloomed against a storm-dark sky, their petals catching the light like flames. The doorbell rang, and I knew it would be Detective Mills with updates about Margaret's sentencing. But for this moment, I stayed where I was, watching the real garden merge with its painted twin in the fading light. Two versions of the same dream, one from the past, one unfolding now, finally in harmony. "Ready?" James asked, standing and offering his hand. I nodded, rising to face whatever came next. After all, that's what this house had always been about, facing truth with courage, nurturing growth through adversity, and believing in the power of love to outlast lies. Eleanor had known it. She'd hidden proof of that love in the heart of this house, trusting that someday someone would find it, and in finding it, we'd all found our way home. I stood in the living room, watching James walk out with his fancy suitcase. His young girlfriend, Sophia, followed closely behind him. The strong scent of her perfume filled the air, mixing with the dinner I had cooked just hours before, the same dinner where my world fell apart. "You're pathetic, Anna," James said coldly, turning back one last time. "No one will believe your crazy accusations. I made sure of that." He tapped his jacket pocket, where his phone held fake messages and proof to make me look unstable. I didn't say a word. After 15 years of marriage, he expected me to cry or beg. But I just sipped my tea, looking at him calmly. "Nothing to say," he mocked. "No more wild ideas about what I've been doing with our money." Sophie giggled and grabbed his arm. "James, baby, let's go. She's not worth it." I set my teacup down. "You're right, James. I have nothing more to say." His face turned red. He hated when I didn't react. He wanted me to be emotional so he could call me crazy. "Good," he snapped. "My lawyer will contact you. Don't expect much. I've covered my tracks." They got into his expensive car and drove away. I waited until the taillights disappeared, then walked straight to his home office. The room smelled like his cologne. His diplomas hung on the wall, showing off his success as a neurosurgeon. I ignored them and went to his desk. The bottom drawer had a hidden compartment. James thought I didn't know about it, but I did. That's where he kept his secret journal. He wrote down everything. Every lie, every stolen dollar, every way he manipulated me. He was so confident that he thought no one would ever catch him. I pulled out the leather-bound book and flipped through the pages. One entry stood out. "Anna's getting suspicious. Told her she's been forgetful, Maybe she needs a doctor. She believed me. So easy to make her doubt herself. I had already seen these pages before. I had copied every single one and sent them to my lawyer. While James was busy making me look crazy, I was quietly collecting proof. Another entry caught my eye. Sophia is perfect for my plan. She thinks I'll build a life with her after I leave Anna. Poor girl has no clue she's just a pawn. Once I get the hospital board position, I'll need someone better for my image. I closed the journal. James had spent years gaslighting me, convincing me I was wrong about his lies, making me doubt what I saw. But he had made one big mistake. He underestimated me. My phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer, Margaret. Everything is ready. He accessed the accounts just like we predicted. Are you ready to proceed? I looked around the office one last time. Soon, James would try to take money from our joint accounts, only to find them frozen. By morning, the hospital board would see proof of how he stole funds, and Sophia, she would realize James had been lying to her too. Yes, I texted back. It's time. I opened the safe behind his expensive painting. Last month, James had changed the lock code, thinking I wouldn't notice. But I had secretly recorded him entering the numbers. Inside the safe were more documents, proof of stolen money, fake hospital records, and secret offshore accounts. For years, James had tried to break me, but every lie only made me stronger. Now, I finally had the truth, and I was going to use it. Another text came in, this time from Detective Torres. Got your evidence. Very thorough. Ready when you are. I smiled. James thought no one would believe me. He was about to find out how wrong he was. I heard cars pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Margaret step out of her car, followed by Detective Torres. It was time to show the world who James really was. I gathered the journal and the files, ready to hand them over. James thought he was walking away free, but he had actually left me with everything I needed to take him down. The doorbell rang. It was time to finish this. The next morning, I sat in Margaret's office, watching James's carefully constructed world crumble through a series of increasingly frantic text messages on my phone. What did you do? The accounts are frozen. Anna, fix this now. You have no idea what you're doing. Each message grew more desperate than the last. I set my phone aside as Margaret spread the journal's contents across her desk, her experienced eyes scanning each damning page. This is extraordinary, she said, adjusting her glasses. Not only did he document the hospital fraud, but he also detailed every step of his plan to discredit you. Most people trying to commit fraud don't create such a thorough record of their crimes. I smiled faintly. James always thought he was the smartest person in the room. He wrote everything down because he never believed anyone would find it, let alone understand the implications. Well, his arrogance is our advantage, Margaret replied, holding up a particularly detailed entry. Look at this. He even recorded the exact amounts he transferred to his offshore accounts. Makes our job much easier. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sophia. James is freaking out. What's going on? He says you're trying to ruin him. I ignored her message. She learned the truth soon enough. Detective Torres entered the office, carrying a thick file. Mrs. Parker, we've verified the offshore account numbers from the journal. Every transaction matches the evidence we've gathered. Your husband wasn't just embezzling from your joint accounts, he was stealing from the hospital's research fund. I thought about all the times James had come home late, claiming he was working on crucial research. How many of those nights had he actually spent falsifying records and moving money? What happens next? I asked, my voice steady. The hospital board is reviewing the evidence now, Detective Torres replied. Given the amount of money involved and the detailed nature of your husband's records, they're taking this very seriously. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a news alert, prominent neurosurgeon under investigation for financial fraud. The story was already breaking. Margaret handed me a cup of coffee. Are you ready for phase 2? Once we file these documents with the court, there's no going back. I took a sip, remembering the night 6 months ago when I first discovered the journal. I'd been looking for a missing earring in his office when I found it, hidden away in that false drawer. Reading those pages had been like having every suspicion, every doubt I pushed aside confirmed in black and white. I'm ready, I said firmly. File everything. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Margaret's team worked efficiently, submitting document after document to the courts. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of James' reputation. Around noon, my phone rang. James's mother, Eleanor. "Anna dear," her usually imperious voice trembled slightly. "Please tell me these horrible stories aren't true. The hospital called James in for an emergency board meeting, and now I'm seeing all these dreadful news reports." "Have you asked James about it?" I kept my tone neutral. Eleanor had always favored her son, dismissing any suggestion that he might be less than perfect. "He's not answering his phone," she admitted. "And that girl he's been seeing, Sophia, she's making quite a scene at the hospital, demanding to know what's happening." I almost felt sorry for Sophia. Almost. "Everything will become clear soon, Eleanor," I said quietly. "Just prepare yourself." As I ended the call, Detective Torres returned with an update. "Your husband's trying to access the offshore accounts. He's getting desperate." And Sophia left the hospital in tears after security escorted her out. Apparently, she was threatening to expose some of his secrets unless he paid her what he promised. I nodded, unsurprised. Sophia had always struck me as more calculating than the besotted girlfriend she pretended to be. The afternoon brought more developments. The hospital board had suspended James pending investigation. His carefully cultivated reputation was unraveling faster than he could spin new lies. Finally, around 4 o'clock, he appeared at Margaret's office, barging in unannounced. He'd lost his usual polished appearance. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair disheveled. "You vindictive witch," he snarled when he saw me. "What have you done?" I met his gaze calmly. "I haven't done anything, James. You did this to yourself." "Those journals were private," he shouted. "You had no right." "To what?" I interrupted. "To expose your fraud? To prove I wasn't crazy or paranoid? To show everyone exactly who you really are." Margaret stepped forward. "Mr. Parker, I suggest you leave now and direct all future communication through your lawyer." James's face contorted with rage. "This isn't over, Anna. No one will believe." "They already do," I cut in, sliding a copy of the day's news coverage across the table. "Your own words, James. Every lie, every manipulation, every crime, all in your own handwriting." He stared at the papers, the color draining from his face as he finally realized the extent of his exposure. His hands shook as he picked up one of the articles. "You'll regret this," he threatened, but his voice had lost its power. I stood up, gathering my belongings. "No, James. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner." As security escorted him out, I watched through the window as his world continued to collapse. His phone rang incessantly, probably the hospital board. His lawyers, maybe even Sophia, all demanding explanations he couldn't give. Detective Torres appeared at my side. "The hospital's pressing charges. With the evidence from the journal and the financial records, he's looking at serious time." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. The man I'd married, the life I thought we had, it had all been a carefully constructed lie. But now finally, the truth was coming out. "You did the right thing," Margaret assured me, gathering the documents into a secure file. Phase 2 was complete. "Are you ready for what comes next?" I took a deep breath. Yes. It's time everyone knew the whole story. The media storm hit harder than I'd expected. By the next morning, James's fall from grace was the leading story in every local paper. Respected surgeon's double life exposed screamed one headline. Hospital fraud scheme uncovered through personal journal declared another. I sat in my kitchen, watching the morning news coverage while Detective Torres updated me on the latest developments. "We've frozen all the accounts we could trace," he said, reviewing his notes. "But there's still money missing. Around $2 million that we can't locate." I sipped my coffee, remembering a particular journal entry from 3 years ago. "Check his mother's beach house in Florida." The entry from March 2021 mentioned a safe behind the master bedroom's wood paneling. Detective Torres raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You really did read everything carefully, didn't you? When you spend years being told you're paranoid, you learn to pay attention to details." My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "We need to talk. There are things you should know." Before I could respond, another message appeared, this time from James. "Meet me. 1 hour. The cafe where we first met. Or I release the videos." I showed the messages to Detective Torres, who immediately started typing on his phone. "We'll have plainclothes officers in place. But are you sure you want to do this?" I nodded. He's bluffing about the videos. There's an entry in the journal about them. They're fake, staged with Sophia to make me look unstable. He was saving them as insurance. We'll still need to proceed carefully, he warned. An hour later, I walked into the Morning Roast Cafe. James sat at our old table, looking disheveled but still maintaining an air of arrogance. Sophia sat nervously beside him, avoiding my eyes. Anna, he attempted his old, charming smile. Let's be reasonable about this. I sat down across from them, acutely aware of the plainclothes officers scattered throughout the cafe. I'm listening. This can all go away, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. I have videos that show you having mental breakdowns, being violent. If these get out, no one will believe anything you say. Your credibility will be destroyed. Sophia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. You mean the videos you staged? I asked calmly. The ones you detailed in your journal? Including the dates they were filmed, who helped you create them, and how much you paid everyone to participate? James's smile faltered. Sophia's head snapped up. You wrote about those, she asked him, her voice sharp. He wrote about everything, I replied, pulling out copies of specific journal entries, including his plans to discard you once you'd served your purpose. Sophia grabbed the papers, her hands trembling as she read. Her face paled. You said I was special, she whispered to James. You said once the divorce was final. He also wrote about the other women. I added quietly. You weren't the first, and you wouldn't have been the last. James slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Those journals were private. You had no right. Actually, Detective Torres appeared beside our table. Those journals are now evidence in a criminal investigation, along with the videos you just attempted to use for blackmail. I watched as the last traces of color drained from James's face. Sophia stood up abruptly, grabbing her designer bag. I don't want any part of this, she announced. And James, check your phone. I just sent some interesting screenshots to the detective here. Turns out I can keep records too. She stormed out, leaving James staring after her in shock. It's over, I said softly. The board has the evidence of your embezzlement. The police have proof of your fraud. Everyone knows the truth now. You've ruined everything, he hissed. No, James, you did that yourself. Every time you wrote in that journal, every time you convinced yourself you were too clever to get caught, you were building the case against yourself. Detective Torres placed a hand on James's shoulder. Mr. Parker, we need you to come with us. We have some questions about the money hidden in your mother's beach house. As they led James away, I remained at the table, looking around the cafe where our story had begun 15 years ago. Back then, I thought I found someone who valued and respected me. Instead, I'd married a man who spent years trying to make me doubt my own sanity. My phone buzzed with a message from Margaret. Hospital board meeting tomorrow. They want you to testify. I typed a quick reply. I'll be there. Tomorrow I would tell my story, not as the unstable woman James had tried to paint me as, but as someone who had found the strength to expose the truth. And I had his own words to back me up, every step of the way. The journal that was meant to document his triumph had become the instrument of his downfall, and there was a certain poetry in that. The hospital board meeting was held in a stark conference room, its walls lined with awards and accolades, many of them bearing James's name. As I prepared to testify, I watched them take down his framed achievements one by one. Mrs. Parker, the board chairman began, we've reviewed the evidence you provided, but we'd like to hear from you directly about what you discovered. I opened the journal to the first flagged page. It started 3 years ago. James began documenting discrepancies in the research fund accounts. At first, small amounts, 10,000 here, 20,000 there. But it grew. The board members listened intently as I walked them through James's detailed records of his fraud. Every transaction, every falsified research report, every manipulated budget, all meticulously documented in his own handwriting. The total amount, I concluded, comes to just over $4 million. Most of it has been recovered from various accounts, including the safe in his mother's beach house. The chairman removed his glasses, rubbing his temples. And the personal elements, the attempts to discredit you? I shared the entries where James had plotted to make me appear unstable, his strategies for gaslighting me, his plans for using Sophia to create evidence of my supposed mental instability. When I finished, the room was silent. Finally, the chairman spoke. Mrs. Parker, we owe you an apology. Many of us witnessed James' attempts to question your stability, and we did nothing. You weren't the only ones, I replied quietly. He was very convincing. After the meeting, I found Sophia waiting outside. She looked different, younger somehow, without her usual perfect makeup and designer clothes. I'm sorry, she said simply. I didn't know about any of it. I thought. She trailed off. You thought you were special, I finished for her. That's what he wanted you to believe. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I've told the police everything. About the staged videos, the promises he made, how he coached me to act around you. Thank you, I said. That will help their case. As I walked to my car, Margaret called with an update. James took a plea deal. 8 years, plus full restitution. His medical license is being revoked. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. And the divorce? Given the evidence of fraud and his criminal conviction, you'll get everything you're entitled to. He won't be able to touch your assets or contest the settlement. That evening, I returned to our house, my house now, and began packing up James's remaining belongings. In his office, I found more journals, older ones, dating back to the beginning of our marriage. Reading them was like watching someone slowly transform into a monster page by page. The early entries showed ambition tinged with arrogance. Over time, that arrogance grew into something darker, more calculating. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor, James's mother. I found more documents in the beach house safe. I'm giving everything to Detective Torres. I'm so sorry, Anna. I should have seen who he really was. I set the phone down and continued packing, coming across photos from happier times, our wedding, vacations, hospital galas. In each one, I could now see what I'd missed. The calculated look in James's eyes, the way he positioned himself to be the center of attention, how I seemed to fade into the background. But I wasn't that person anymore. 6 months later, I stood in the newly renovated living room of my house. Gone were the pretentious artworks James had insisted on, replaced by pieces that brought me joy. His dark leather furniture had been exchanged for comfortable, bright pieces that made the space feel like home. Detective Torres had become a friend, stopping by occasionally to update me on the case's final details. The last of the money has been recovered, he told me during one visit. The hospital's research fund has been fully restored. And James, I asked, adapting poorly to prison life, from what I hear, keeps insisting everyone's conspiring against him. I thought about the journal that had started it all, now safely stored as evidence. He never understood that his biggest enemy was himself. Margaret called with one final piece of news. The divorce is official. You're free. Free, the word echoed in my mind as I looked around my home. Free from the gaslighting, the manipulation, the constant self-doubt. Free to be myself again. I'd started volunteering at a support group for victims of psychological abuse, sharing my story to help others recognize the signs I'd missed for so long. Some of the women there had similar stories of manipulation, of carefully documented lies, of the strength it took to break free. My phone buzzed with a message from Sophia. Testified against James today. Thought you should know, he still doesn't get it. Still thinks he's the victim. Thank you for showing me the truth. I smiled, remembering James's sneering words that night. No one will ever believe your stories. But they had believed, because in the end it wasn't just my word against his. It was his own words, his own detailed records of his crimes that had revealed the truth. I walked to my bedroom window, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The journal that James had kept as a trophy of his cleverness had become the key to my freedom. Sometimes I realized the truth has a way of coming out, one page at a time. Time to write my own story, I whispered to myself and opened my laptop to begin. Marcus smirked as he threw his duffel bag into the trunk of his BMW. No marriage certificate, no property split, he said. You can't claim anything without proof. I stood there, keeping my face calm even though I was boiling inside. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 35, I was watching my husband of 8 years leave me for his 25-year-old girlfriend. A husband who had conveniently lost our marriage certificate 2 months ago during our home renovation. Don't worry about the house, Marcus added, checking his hair in the car mirror. You can stay here until I decide what to do with it. Consider it a gift. He even winked, like he was being generous. I crossed my arms, silently watching him. He expected me to cry, beg, or get angry. Instead, I said nothing. No reaction, he asked, sounding disappointed. Not going to fight for our marriage. I almost laughed. Fight for a man who was literally moving in with another woman. The same woman he had been secretly seeing for months. No, Marcus, I said calmly, your decision is clear. He frowned, clearly surprised. He thought he was in control, that he was too smart to be caught. He believed that without a marriage certificate, I had no legal claim to anything. But what he didn't know was that I had been paying attention. The late nights, the locked phone, the work dinners that never showed up on his expense reports, I had seen it all. After all, I had worked in criminal investigations for years. This would be easier if you just accepted that things change, Marcus continued. Sophia understands me in ways you never could. I smiled slightly. Sophia, the young paralegal who somehow lived in a luxury apartment. The same woman who had been asking a lot of questions about our property at the office Christmas party. I'm sure she does, I replied. Something in my tone made Marcus pause. What do you mean by that? I shrugged. Just wishing you well. That's what divorcing couples do, right? He narrowed his eyes. We're not divorcing. No marriage certificate, no divorce. And even if you found a copy, everything's in my name. You have nothing. I thought about the call I made last week, about the documents stored in my office. Marcus thought he had covered his tracks. But he had underestimated me. You're right, I said softly. I guess I have nothing to lose. His confidence wavered for the first time. What are you planning? Planning? I echoed. Nothing at all. Just watching my husband leave for his girlfriend. He got into his car, trying to act like he wasn't nervous. Don't do anything stupid, Olivia. You can't win against me in court. I'm a lawyer. Oh, I remember, I said with a small smile. Say hi to Sophia for me. As he drove away, I pulled out my phone and called a number I knew by heart. Detective Parker's office answered a familiar voice. Hey, Jim, I said, watching Marcus disappear down the street. Remember that favor you owe me? I need to check some records. Jim chuckled. This about Marcus. Let's just say I need to verify some paperwork. About time, Jim said. Come by tomorrow, and Olivia, bring your laptop. You'll want to see this. I ended the call and looked up at the house Marcus thought he could take from me. He had always underestimated me. He forgot that before I was his wife, I was a forensic investigator, specializing in financial crimes. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. The next morning, I walked into Jim's office carrying my laptop and 8 years' worth of carefully documented evidence. The familiar smell of coffee and old case files brought back memories of my days working in this department. Still keeping that door hinge squeaky for dramatic effect? I asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. Jim grinned, pushing a cup of coffee toward me. Some things never change. Speaking of change, I pulled those records you asked about. He turned his monitor toward me. Your husband's been busy. I leaned forward, scanning the document on his screen. It was a digital copy of our marriage certificate filed with the county clerk's office 8 years ago. Next to it was a series of access logs showing repeated attempts to alter the digital records over the past 3 months. He tried to hack the county database. I couldn't help but laugh. Marcus always thought he was smarter than everyone else. Not just tried, Jim said, clicking through more logs. He paid someone to do it, left a pretty clear trail too. Amateur hour stuff. He paused, studying my face. You knew this was coming, didn't you? I opened my laptop, pulling up folders of meticulously organized files. Let's just say I learned a thing or two about documentation during our marriage. Each folder contained years of financial records, property deeds, text messages, and emails. I'd started backing everything up the day Marcus began working late with his new paralegal. Look at this, I said, showing Jim a particular email thread. 3 months ago, Sophia started asking about property transfers and marriage nullification. Marcus thought he was being clever using her private email, but he forgot I used to track digital forensics for a living. Jim whistled low as he scrolled through the evidence. He's not just trying to hide your marriage. He's been moving assets around, setting up shell companies. His eyes narrowed at a particular document. Is that the deed to your Vermont cabin? The one he claims is only in his name. I smiled. Check the original filing date. Jim's eyebrows shot up as he read. You bought it before the marriage, with your own money. From my 5 years of savings as an investigator, I confirmed. Marcus just assumed it was his because he's used to taking credit for everything. We spent the next hour going through the documentation. Every attempt Marcus had made to hide our marriage or shield assets had left a digital footprint. His mistake wasn't just in underestimating me. It was in forgetting what I did before I met him. One more thing, Jim said, pulling out a thick folder. Remember that fraud case you helped crack back in 15? The one with the falsified property records? I nodded, the pieces clicking into place. The Henderson case. The one where we proved digital tampering with county records. Exactly, and guess who just hired the same tech guy Henderson used? Jim pushed a surveillance photo across the desk. It showed Marcus meeting with a man I recognized from the old case files. Oh, Marcus, I sighed, shaking my head. You really should have Googled your hacker better. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Stopped by the house. Where are you? We need to talk about the property situation. I showed the message to Jim, who chuckled. Guess he's figured out he can't access the home security system anymore. Amazing what changing a few passwords can do, I replied, gathering my files. Think we have enough here? Jim nodded, his expression serious. More than enough. Want me to make some calls? I know a few judges who'd be very interested in this attempted records tampering. Not yet, I said, standing up. First, I want to give Marcus one chance to do the right thing. Not because he deserves it, but because I want him to know exactly what he's up against. Always the strategist, Jim smiled. Given hell, Olivia. As I drove home, I thought about Marcus's face when he realized his clever plan wasn't so clever after all. He'd spent months orchestrating what he thought was the perfect escape. Hiding our marriage certificate, moving assets, setting up his new life with Sophia. All while assuming I was too trusting, too naive to notice. My phone buzzed again. Olivia, where are you? This is important. Call me. I pulled into our driveway, noticing Marcus's BMW parked on the street. He was sitting on the front steps, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. His confidence replaced by obvious agitation. Where have you been? He demanded, standing up as I approached. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I walked past him to unlock the door, my evidence files tucked safely in my bag. Sorry, I was at a meeting. About our marriage certificate, actually. He followed me inside, his footsteps faltering slightly. What do you mean, a meeting? I turned to face him, enjoying the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. You know, Marcus, for a lawyer, you really should be more careful about who you hire to hack government databases. The color drained from his face. For the first time since this all began, Marcus looked genuinely afraid. What exactly are you implying? Marcus asked, trying to regain his composure as we stood in our living room. His lawyer mask was slipping back into place, but I could see the panic in his eyes. I'm not implying anything, I replied calmly, setting my bag on the coffee table. I'm telling you that I have proof of your attempts to tamper with county records, hide assets, and fraudulently invalidate our marriage. Would you like to see the evidence? He sank into the armchair, his confidence crumbling. How did you? No. I finished for him. Marcus, did you forget what I did before we met? Financial crimes investigation isn't just a job title. It's a skill set. I pulled out my laptop and began opening files. Let's start with the cabin in Vermont. The one you claimed was yours? I bought it before we married. Here's the deed, the bank transfers, and my old pay stubs proving the source of funds. That's not, he started, but I cut him off. Then there's the matter of our marriage certificate. Did you really think hiring the same hacker from the Henderson case was smart? The case I helped prosecute. I turned the screen toward him, showing the access logs. Every attempt to alter those records is documented. Every email between you and Sophia about property transfers, tracked. Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing the room. This is ridiculous. You're trying to intimidate me. Sophia's father is a judge. He'll never let. Judge Harrison. I smiled. The one who presided over the Henderson case? I'm sure he'd be very interested to know his daughter is involved in similar activities. That stopped him cold. You wouldn't. Try me. I closed my laptop. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You have two choices. First option, we handle this fairly. A clean divorce, equal property division, no games. I'll even let you keep the BMW you love so much. He swallowed hard. And the second option, I take everything I've found to the State Bar Association, the district attorney, and every judge in the circuit. Your law license, your reputation, your freedom, all gone. And Sophia? She'll be facing charges too. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice wavered. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jim's number, putting it on speaker. Hey Jim, we ready to move forward with those charges? Just say the word, Olivia. Jim's voice crackled through the speaker. The DA's been briefed, and Judge Harrison is particularly interested in the evidence involving his daughter. Marcus collapsed back into the chair, his face ashen. Turn it off. I ended the call, watching him process his complete loss of control. The man who thought he could outsmart everyone was finally realizing he'd been outplayed. Why? He asked quietly. Why not just turn me in? Because despite everything, I love you once, I replied honestly, and because I'd rather move forward than waste time on revenge. But make no mistake, if you try to fight this, I won't hesitate to use everything I have. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Finally, he looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Respect. The prenup, he said. It's still valid. Even split, right? I nodded. That's all I ever wanted, Marcus. A fair ending. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and negotiations. True to his word, once broken, Marcus handled the divorce fairly. The marriage certificate mysteriously reappeared in our files, and all attempts to alter county records ceased. Sophia, faced with the prospect of charges and her father's disappointment, quickly distanced herself from the situation. Last I heard, she transferred to a firm in another state. As I stood in the cabin that autumn, watching leaves fall over the lake, I felt nothing but peace. Sometimes winning isn't about destroying your opponent. It's about being prepared, staying calm, and knowing when to show your hand. Jim called to check on me occasionally. You could have taken him for everything, he said during one call. Why didn't you? Because this way, I want something more valuable than property, I replied, sipping my coffee on the cabin's porch. I won my freedom, my dignity, and the knowledge that I never had to compromise who I am. The lake stretched out before me, calm and clear, reflecting the mountains like a mirror. Marcus had always underestimated this place, seeing it as just another asset. He never understood that its real value lay in the peace it offered, the strength it represented. I smiled, thinking about how differently things had turned out from what Marcus planned. He thought he was dealing with a knave wife he could easily deceive. Instead, he learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate a woman who knows her worth and keeps receipts. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply showing someone exactly who you've been all along.